God is not dead. God is not dead. Probably you might remember the movie a little more than a decade ago by that title, God is Not Dead. It was based on a true story of a young freshman in college. And this young student, a very devout Christian, went to his first philosophy class, and the professor, an atheist, told the students, if you want to save a lot of time in this course, all of you will pull out a piece of paper and write the following words. The words were this: God is dead. And all of the students in the class wrote this except this one young man who was a devout Christian, and he wrote, God is not dead. And of course, it began the dialogue between this young student and the professor saying, since you're going to waste the time of this class, you will have to prove to all of us that God is not dead. And as the movie went on, this young man did prove, and student after student started to stand up in class and say, God is not dead. And eventually, by the end of the movie, the professor, the atheist himself, professed that God was not dead because of this young man's response to the initial statement in class, write down God is dead. A movie based on a true story. Well, how is it that we respond regularly in those similar moments, maybe not in such of a dramatic way, but we're called to maybe say the same thing, God is dead. How is it that we respond? How is it that we've responded all through the season of Lent, and how is it that we respond this Sunday particularly to the gospel, very long gospel, but familiar one, about the rising of Lazarus? How is it that we respond to this? And what were the responses at that moment as this event was taking place? Well, we have many responses. We begin with Jesus himself. His response is a little odd. Here he gets news, the one you love is dead, and what does he do? Intentionally waits to go. Now, the majority of us, if someone that close to us was dying, we'd probably get in the car right away or grab the next plane to fly wherever we needed to go. Jesus decided to wait. Why? Very odd response. Jesus wanted to help Lazarus, not out of chance, but out of intentionality. He wanted to intend for Lazarus to be a great sign of who Jesus was. Through this event, Jesus grows everyone's faith. Well, if Jesus just healed him like he did the blind man, big deal. We've seen him do this already. But if Lazarus dies and bring him back to life, well, that's something now. It's an awesome event. And of course, it ties directly to the first reading from the prophet Ezekiel, where we hear that God himself will bring forward the dead from the tomb. He grew everyone's faith. We hear at the end, many came to believe. And Jesus taught them and teaches us now as we reflect upon this passage about eternal life and about God's power and sovereignty over both our physical lives and life eternal. In John's Gospel, we refer to the miracles really as signs, and Jesus' sign here, the miracle here, has great power and meaning. We hear very clearly the detail that Lazarus is dead for 4 days. Well, that's very important because for the Jewish people, they saw that the first 3 days after someone's death, it was kind of an intermediate state where the spirit was still close to the body. But after those 3 days were over, you were dead. You were deader than dead. You were dead. And so, dear Lazarus, he is really dead. It's the 4th day. He's really dead. And so Jesus' premeditated decision really to wait to go to Bethany until this moment was really a premeditated act of love and a premeditated sign of who Jesus exactly was. And of course, we see the response of Martha, and we know Martha well. And you know Martha, the workaholic, that Martha, that's who we're talking about here. Martha, who was the, Martha Stewart or Julia Childs at the time, the great housekeeper, that Martha. Martha who was the one that told Jesus, if you want to eat dinner, tell Mary here to help me. That Martha who did not have an unpublished thought. That's the Martha that we meet in the gospel again today. And what do we see in Martha? What is her response? Well, first response, true to form, she says exactly what she's thinking. Well, Lord, if you only had been here, my brother wouldn't have died. Kind of telling it like it is. But then we see Martha's real response, her confession of faith. And she graduates to be able to say, even now I know that whatever you ask of God, God will give you. And then she goes to confess her faith in a fashion very much like Simon Peter and very much like doubting Thomas in the time of the resurrection. What does Martha say? Almost the same type of words. Yes, Lord, I've come to believe that you are the Christ, the Son of God, the one who is coming into the world. There's much more that I can say about this gospel, and all of you know that there's much more that I can say, But I'm going to leave it here with a simple rhetorical question. What is your response? What is your response to this gospel? What has your response been to this season of Lent? And what is your response to those moments where maybe we're called to agree with others that God is dead? And I leave it here because after communion, Brother Elliot will have a few moments to share thoughts about our 3 days together of retreat and invite us to be part of that. And so maybe just a couple questions to ponder as we enter into this time of Lenten retreat and we bring Lent as a whole quickly to a close. How is it that you confess your faith? Is it like Martha and Peter and doubting Thomas to confess that Jesus Christ is Lord and the one who was to come to the world? In this Lent, have you lived more like the original Martha, maybe doing things, or this Lent, have you been more like the Martha we meet in the gospel today? Have you grown in a deeper understanding of who Jesus Christ, risen from the dead, truly is, and how that fact and personal relationship with him has truly changed you?